Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Leadership Project Live. We're really looking forward to bringing you another amazing live stream today with a truly amazing guest, and there'll be more to share about that shortly. As you come in today, please do say hello, tell us where you're joining from, and if you'd like, let us know what you're most looking forward to out of today's discussion around psychological safety and speak up culture. And start thinking about what questions or comments you might have. And you can post your questions. We're joined here in a live audience, people from both LinkedIn and Facebook. And if you post your questions into LinkedIn or Facebook, my guest and I, Stephen Shedletzky and I, will be able to see those questions and we'll be able to answer those questions live for you. It'd be greatly appreciated when you do post those questions. If you just put a capital Q at the front of the question, and it helps us to filter to be different between what might be just a comment of support versus what might be a question that you'd like us to address during the live stream today. As we get prepared for bringing our guest on today, I'd just like to take a little bit of your time to share a little bit of news with you about where we're at here at the Leadership Project. First of all, last week, we did celebrate our 50th episode of the Leadership Project podcast, and that's something that we're really proud of. So great thanks to people like Faris Sadek, our audio and video editor, who none of this would be possible if it wasn't for people like Faris and my broader team. Joanne goes on, Gerald Calabo, Rika Vidanes, and my dear wife, Say Spears, who's also our operations manager. So there's no way that we would have got to this amazing milestone without your great support. So thank you. And on that, I'm really excited to tell you that our 50th episode was with our guest today. So Stephen Shedletzky, who will be introducing to you shortly. So we couldn't have been more honored to have such an amazing guest for our 50th episode. And now we're all honored because we get to have Shed on the show today to be able to answer your live questions. And we'll be getting to that momentarily. So we do have some people starting to come in. We've got Rika Lopez coming in from Taguig in the Philippines. Thank you, Rika. Really appreciate your support each and every week. And we've got Alejandro Stevens Lagos. Hey, everybody joining from Chile. I love Shed's take on speak up culture, so I'm looking forward to keep learning and developing knowledge on it. And Alejandro is someone that when we announced this show, he instantly started engaging with us and could tell that he was going to be excited about today's program. We've got Faris. He is our audio and video content editor, and he is joining us from Singapore. And it's great to see him on the show because a lot of this is the fruits of his labor. And I know that he's deeply interested in our content as well. So thank you, Faris, for popping in there and saying hello. So once again, I'll just remind you, if you do have comments, this is for you as well. This is for you to share your opinions about speak up culture and psychological safety. And it's also your ability to ask those live questions. So if you do have a question, please put them in the chat. And if you can, please put that Q on the front of your question so it helps Shed and I to find them. We do have Joanne saying that she's excited to hear Shed. What a timely topic, watching intently from the Philippines. And we have Lenka joining us from New Zealand. So truly international audience today. Great to see you, Lenka. I haven't been on a call with you for a while, but it's good to see that you're joining here today. And my lovely wife, Say, is also always providing her support, also joining. And Annie Bradshaw, also from Auckland, and saying hello to Lenka. So two people that know each other. So that's great that they're also connecting together there as we start. So we've also got Adrian Tan joining from Singapore. Adrian is very well versed in psychological safety, a topic that's very close to her heart, and looking forward to hearing what Shed has to share with us today. So with that all being the case, we've got another one here. Greetings from Northern Virginia. 50th episode was great and looking forward to the discussion tonight. So people that have listened to Shed's interview and are joining in to hear what Shed has to share today and potentially ask those live questions. So without further ado, I'd like to now bring our guest to the virtual stage, if you like. So Stephen Shedletzky, or better known as Shed, and I'm going to be calling him Shed because that's how I know him for the whole episode today. So Stephen, you are now on the screen, by the way, and I'll take you off mute so you can say a few things in a moment. Shed is an igniter and a speaker and a master facilitator with Simon Sinek Inc., and he's in the process of writing a much anticipated book about speak up culture. And we're going to get him to introduce, first of all, what inspired him to write that book and get us going on today's topic. So Shed, please say hello to our audience and tell us more about what inspired you to write the book.
Hello, thank you. Hi, Mick, and hi, everyone. So great to be joined by so many people from all over. This is great and exciting. Delighted to be joining you from Toronto, and I mean it's personal. I'm writing this book because of personal experiences. A couple sort of fundamental things. One is, and I'm sure this can relate to others, is I've been on parts of teams and been in relationships and organizations where there is a healthy speak up culture. And when I describe a speak up culture, I mean using psychological safety as the input to get us a speak up culture as the output, right? A environment, a culture where there is psychological safety means we can raise our hand, stick our neck out there, share ideas even if they're half baked, share concerns, and even disagree. Mick, let's say you're more senior to me in an organization and I can say, hey, I'm not sure I see it the way that you see it. Can you explain that again? Or I see a different point of view, and you actually reward that. And so when we have psychological safety, we can have a speak up culture. If we don't have a speak up culture, we are breeding environments, as Andy Stanley would say, and you posted this on the Leadership Project today, I believe, that leaders who do not listen will eventually be surrounded by people who have nothing to say. And that silence can be very dangerous. At its most innocuous, you miss opportunities. At its most dangerous, it can lead to the failure of the firm or even devastation, which we've seen in countless examples, from the 737 MAX 8 to the NASA Challenger to even Korean Air, which is an interesting case study, which is a lack of speak up in that culture, which has changed for the better, fortunately. And so I've been parts of teams where there is speak up culture and it's wonderful. And I've been parts of teams and organizations where there isn't, and there's tons of politics and it's exhausting mentally and it isn't healthy. And then further for me as well, I grew up with a speech impediment. I grew up with a stutter. I still do work on it. Ironically, part of what I do for a living is speak, so I've learned how to work with it. I also married a speech language pathologist. Good choice. But yeah, I know I grew up knowing, Mick, what it felt like to be voiceless. And that's not a fun feeling. And so I love helping leaders nurture the voice of others because it's good for business and it's good for culture.
I like that term there, that voiceless, right? And you're talking about something from your early formative years that made you understand what it means to be voiceless. But people without a speech impediment are sitting in organizations today and feeling voiceless, not physically, but metaphorically, because they can't speak up for whatever reason. And yeah, it's wonderful when you see an organization that has managed to master it. Unfortunately, it's not the norm. I think we have far too much of the other. I want to test something with you, Shed, as we go. Well, first of all, actually, we missed a key point, the title of the book. So speak up culture, when leaders truly listen, people step up. Yep. Why that title?
So people don't buy drills, they buy holes, which is a Zig Ziglar quote. So I'm calling it speak up culture because that's the output when you have the input of psychological safety. I also feel that psychological safety is too much of an academic term, and it's like putting on like a white lab coat when talking about human emotion. Speak up culture more so speaks to the whole, not the drill. And then I was very insistent with the publisher on adding in the word truly, When leaders truly listen, people step up, because listening is a skill. Compassion and empathy are attributes, which is a nod to my friend Rich Davini and his work with the attributes. So truly for me means, I could listen, I could hear you, I could be a great listener, but then I could use that information against you, which means that I'm listening not to help, I'm listening to manipulate. And so I think truly for me, and truly listen means that we're putting the attributes of compassion, empathy, care, concern, which are leadership attributes, in front of what I mean by listen.
Yeah, I like this truly. And if I can go a bit deeper for a second, Shed, and see
You're
what you think
welcome
of
to,
this.
yes.
So,
Yeah.
so truly listening to someone is actually listening also with an open mind, with an open will, with an open heart, listening to the emotion, seeing the whole of the person. It's not just the words that are coming out of the mouth. What are they trying to tell you? What are they trying to express to you in their emotion, in significance, in what is the importance and meaning of what they're trying to tell you? Not just listening for what you want to hear or what you think you heard. How does that sit with you?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just flash the book because it's so good. This is The Attributes by my friend Rich Davini. And the reason I'm showing it is there's a page in here, which is probably my most favorite page in any book on leadership. And it distinguishes between a leader and a driver, which is, I think, what you're pointing towards.
Yeah.
So a driver may be in charge, may have the title of leadership, but they do not lead. They view people as cogs in a machine, people as literally their purpose is to create an outcome, and they use people. And while they can create results and outcomes in the short run, it's like putting a snowmobile in sand. It'll work, but you got to work it harder. You have to repair it more frequently, and eventually you just have to replace the whole thing. But the thing is that an organization is not a snowmobile or a snow machine. An organization is a living, breathing organism. That's what it is. It's made up of human beings. And numbers never come to the aid, or the cloud never comes to the aid. It's always people that do. It's people who make organizations work and thrive. And so, when you replace the brakes on your car, do you mourn the brakes? No, you buy new brake pads. Like that's that. That's how drivers view people. And again, though they can squeeze productivity out of people, it is not sustainable. Leaders, as I said, view people and view their organizations as living, breathing organisms, and they strive to nurture and support them. And so listening is a tool to help people, help leaders see their people. A fun, quick story of this, which I think is powerful and I'm putting in the book. I did a workshop with a sales organization out of Latin America. They're in pharmaceutical sales. They stock shelves in pharmacy retail locations with your sort of pharmaceutical commodities. Frontline sales job. Pandemic hit. No one was going out into the field and doing that job. Everything became remote overnight. And there's one employee who was struggling quite a bit. Single mother of two young children. Usually the kids are in daycare, out in school. Well, that didn't happen. They shifted to virtual, which for me, I had a 4-year-old at the beginning of the pandemic, and virtual daycare is not a thing. It doesn't work, and it happens for maybe 15 minutes at a time. And so this individual sales contributor, their results were suffering bad. The territory leader, who they call Jefe, a guy by the name of Fabio, he usually went out into the field and joined his salespeople out in the field for a day. He would fly in very early. He said, "Why should my people have to wait for me? I'll take the 4 a.m. flight so that I can start their day when they start their day." He's that type of servant leader. And she shared this story that her numbers were bad because of the pandemic and because of the situation she was in. And she had her one-on-one meeting with her leader. And she was preparing a PowerPoint deck to essentially prove to him how she can save her numbers and keep her job. And so they hopped on. They said hello. She was totally stressed and distraught, and she immediately shares her screen and begins to share essentially a PowerPoint on, here's how I'm going to save my job. And he says, "What are you doing?" She's like, my numbers are awful. I'm going to prove to you that I can get things back together and keep going. And he says, turn off the screen. He said, usually I'd fly out, we'd be together in person, we'd be in your car, we'd go to your sites, we'd meet with the people in your territory, we'd break bread together. We're in the middle of a pandemic and you're a single mother of two. Take it down. How are you? What's going on? This is a check-in for you, not your numbers. We'll talk about that later. Yeah. What's up? To which she broke down in tears, shared what was actually happening. And he said to her, you're good, you're safe, your job isn't at risk here, I got your back, we have enough runway here, you're a good person, you're a good performer, you're a good teammate, we'll figure it out. They both exhaled, and he said, all right, now you can show me that PowerPoint deck. And it totally transformed the entire meeting because he truly listened. Yeah. And he wasn't doing that for any other reason than it's the right thing to do for your people. Oh, and it's good for business too. Yeah. Because now she's on her third mat leave, but she's totally loyal and will run through walls for that leader.
Great reset there. And what a wonderful example. And one of the things from our podcast that I remember quite clearly is our discussion that we had about the debate that people have about leaders versus managers, and that management has somehow become a trite term that people say, oh, no, we want leaders, not managers. But the truth is we want both. And your definition there that we do need managers, and we're going to have Ariel O'Farrell back on the show again soon to talk about this, because she gets offended. She's the author of a book called The Manager's Dilemma, and she gets offended by this attack on the word manager, your term driver, and the difference between leaders and managers that achieve results through people, whereas drivers are achieving results at the expense of people and don't care
Bingo.
If they leave collateral damage behind. All right. We're starting to get some questions through. I want to just go through a couple more principal things first, Shed, and then we're going to jump into the questions that we're getting from Tate and from Joanne, etc. So psychological safety is sometimes misunderstood. So a lot of people will think that, oh, it just means you need a lovey-dovey environment where everyone just cuddles each other and I think you said on our podcast, sings Kumbaya and all this kind of stuff. But that's not what it is, right? So tell me what you believe psychological safety is.
Well, I will admit singing Kumbaya in harmony may take both high trust and high performance, so maybe it's a bad example. But yeah, one of the misunderstandings with psychological safety is it means, everybody just gets along all the time. It's warm and fuzzy and cuddly, which is not the truth. A huge hallmark of a psychologically safe culture is that you're high on candor and low on fear. Not no fear. That's impossible. That's why I harp against the term fearless leader. Never met one. We need fear. We wouldn't have courage if we didn't have fear. Fear is important and fear is human. So I don't believe in such a thing as a fearless leader. So yeah, we have high candor, low fear. So high candor means that you and I can have truthful conversations even if they are hard, and that we have them by lowering our ego, ramping up on humility, and talking about the hard stuff to create improvement. We can disagree. We can even get into arguments with respect, but it's always about making improvements toward our culture, our performance, our results, our service, whatever it might be. And so, yeah, psychological safety is not about warm and fuzzy. And in fact, I would be really concerned if you have a culture where there isn't disagreement and there isn't hard conversations. For me, that would be more of a toxically positive culture as opposed to a psychologically safe culture.
Yeah, and toxic positivity is an issue when, this is the typical thing of, someone comes 34th in the cross-country race out of 34 and they get a trophy and congratulations, and they didn't really even have to try to get there, right? So we don't want toxic positivity. This high candor, you also said a really important word. You said respect. So it's not licensed to be, got to be careful here, I don't want to get censored by LinkedIn, but it's not licensed to be an a-hole. It's candor. Tell us the difference there.
Well, so two things. So one, I'll double click on toxic positivity a little bit, but for candor with care and high candor, I'll take from Kim Scott's work. I mean, she's done the work for us. So for anyone who's not yet familiar with Kim Scott and her work, she wrote her first book, I believe, is Radical Candor. I don't love the title because, let's face it, most people read covers of books, not books. And when you see radical candor, it's like, oh, excuse to be a jerk. No, 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 no. Radical candor means you both challenge directly and care personally. It is both. If you just challenge directly and don't care personally, I believe she calls that obnoxious aggression. If you care personally but don't challenge directly, you're being passive and nice, as opposed to kind, right? We can be kind by saying, I have some feedback for you. You may not want to hear it, but I'm sharing it with you because I think it can make you a better person and a better professional. Are you ready for that combo, right? Oh, and by the way, this isn't fact, it's opinion, and I want to hear yours too, right?
Yeah.
I think feedback is
good.
a dish best shared, not served.
And
And
sorry.
sorry, go
I was
for
going
it,
to say
man.
it's also perspective, right? So when you said it's opinion, it's what that person is seeing from their angle, which might be
Yeah.
different to what you're seeing from your angle. And a richer experience is to see all of those perspectives. Yeah.
Yes, there's no such thing as the truth, just about close to 8 billion perceptions of it.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
your truth plus my truth equals higher truth.
Yeah. Good.
I've sat in meetings that I thought were the most effective meeting ever. I debriefed with someone who's a close friend, and they felt very different. We were in the same meeting, but we have different perceptions and perspectives. And then the other thing with toxic positivity, it's not just about rewarding the 34th of 34. Toxic positivity is earmarked by a culture in which we only talk about the future, and we only talk about good things.
Yeah. Right.
It's kind of just putting on a rosy and the important thing, and because it's become so pervasive, because so many leaders through the pandemic have not created a space to talk about hard stuff, to talk about the fact that we've had to lay off 40% of our workforce, or chose to lay off 40% of the workforce, whatever it might be, and that people are grieving, the fact that life is hard right now. We've seen huge backlashes from organizations saying we don't talk about politics, or we don't talk about certain things at work, and people resign. They say, not for me. So toxic positivity is, certain things and emotions, we just don't talk about it.
Yeah.
That might be fine for your family reunion. Don't think that's fine for
Not necessarily
optimally
healthy.
performing organizations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, very good. So I want to summarize a little bit and talk about this high candor, low fear, and then we're going to get into the questions. So what I'm hearing, high candor, the ability to express your perspective and opinions with respect and care. And then low fear, to be able to do so without fear of judgment or retribution.
Yes. So the two pieces of a speak up culture are encourage and reward. So encourage means I feel it's never without risk, but I feel that it will be rewarded, or it's worth the risk.
Yeah.
Can't high candor is truthful conversation, even if hard. And low fear is the barrier to entry is as low as it possibly can be.
Right. And when that
Yeah.
reward exceeds the fear.
Yes. And what's fun about the reward is it ripples, as does ignoring and punishing. So again, let's say you and I are colleagues, same level, or even you're more junior to me, whatever it might be, and I try to have a high candor conversation with you. If it goes well, I now give you a reputation amongst others saying, Mick, you can go there and have hard conversations with him, with respect, but you can do it. Similarly, if you're inconsistent, and a huge piece of trust is to show up with consistency. If I attempt to have that conversation with you and it doesn't go well, that also has reputation as well. It's not rewarded. Don't do it today, or it's not just within the one-to-one relationship. It ripples because
Yeah.
we're all part of networks.
I want to unpack that reward a little bit more for a second, and then I think it's going to relate well to Joanne's question that's coming up shortly. So this reward, for me, yes, it's what is rewarded or celebrated, sets the culture in the business. It's also what is tolerated and what's not tolerated, which is different, right? So if someone's behavior is out of line in some way, they're not giving care and respect in the way that they speak, for example, and you tolerate it, people see that And they're going to go in one of two directions. They're either going to go, I saw the way that happened. He behaved like this, and he got away with it. I can do it too.
I
Or
can do it too.
I can't believe that he got away with it. I'm out of here. All right. So it's also reward, but it's also what you tolerate and what you don't tolerate. How does that sit with you?
Yes. Yeah, we in our cultures we get the behavior we reward and we get the behavior that we tolerate.
Yeah, cool.
Bingo.
All right, very good.
Bingo. Yeah.
All right, let's have a crack at some of these questions coming through Shed. So Tate, good to see and hear you both. To allow and empower teams and leaders to speak up and challenge the status quo. This will require a huge change globally in mindsets, processes, and approaches. His question then, for those that are feeling isolated and voiceless, that are in that situation, what advice do you have?
So in a situation where, what's that, Mick, where someone feels voiceless, or
they feel isolated. Yeah, they feel isolated and they feel voiceless. Yeah. They are the ones that are feeling that right now. What advice do you give to them?
Yeah, I mean, so we can spend a life and career doing this, pointing our fingers at others, or we can spend a life and career pointing fingers at ourselves. This is the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. And I think, if we are in a position where we feel voiceless, or we feel that we're not in a speak up culture, or that we can't speak up or challenge the status quo, I would focus on what is actually in our control. What are the relationships we can choose to nurture that are healthy, whether it's within the organization or outside of the organization. Sometimes, there's legitimate psychological danger. There's then there's my colleague Leanne Davey writes about this. So there's legitimate psychological danger. Then there's essentially fear of aversive outcome, I believe Leanne calls it, which means if I share this idea, people will ask me to prove it. I'll have to do more work. They'll challenge me. That's not lack of psychological safety. That might be lack of confidence or lack of the willingness to put in the work. So sometimes if you don't want to speak up or feel voiceless, check it. Like it isn't binary, not psychological safety. You might have to do a bit of work, which is fine. The third is sometimes there can be baggage. There can be previous bosses, former experiences, childhood experiences, whatever it might be, that you feel there might not be psychological safety, but there may in fact be. And so what I would encourage you to do is just lean in and try a little bit with a relationship that feels safe. Check it out. In absence of that, nurture those relationships where you can do that. Again, whether it's within that culture or in a different one. Because what's fun is if you focus on what's in your control and invest in those relationships that feel safe and right, eventually you or they will get a promotion, whether it's within that company or another. And they'll say, hey, Mick, we have a great relationship. Come and work here. And you might be part of an amazing psychologically safe team.
I'm hearing three things there, Shed, that are really interesting to me. The first one you said was check in with yourself. And what I'm hearing there is double check whether there's a limiting belief that is creating you to feel that you can't speak up first. And that limiting belief might come from a bad experience in the past or something like that. And then I heard you say test the waters. So work out, okay, what can I do to dip my toe in the water and see what's going to work here in a good approach. And then I heard you talk about nurturing relationships. So where it works and where it sticks, nurture that relationship, because that relationship may be something that becomes very treasured for you into the future. How does that summary for you?
Yeah, really good, Mick. Well done. And the thing that I'll point out with limiting belief is it's very hard to read the label on the jar when we're inside the jar ourselves. And so, listen, if you can journal, if you can create some objectivity, cool. But coaches, colleagues, mentors, friends, therapists, whatever it might be, can really help you work through some of those limiting beliefs as opposed to staying in here, because there's saboteurs and other fun voices that kind of get in the way with what a true narrative could be. So I love how you summarize that. I think that's great.
All right. Okay, brilliant, Shed. And thank you, Tate, joining us from Melbourne in Australia. Thank you, Tate, for that question. Wonderful. And we've got people supporting that question as well, also finding that question to be very useful for them. Let's go to Joanne's question. So, what if culture at top management does not allow speak up culture? Uh, like what you said, people are seen as cogs in a machine. If you're in one of those ones where you've got drivers managing the culture, what can you do to create or sustain a speak up culture when top management has a different culture?
Yeah, so a similar question to Tate, but slightly nuanced and different. So the fun thing about this, Joanne, is that the tail can wag the dog. Meaning, there's a couple of ways that we can change culture, change an organization, and even a country's culture. We can go top down, which is evolution, or we can go bottom up, which is revolution. Typically, a revolution is more violent and aggressive. And evolution usually is safer and adopts more if it's totally genuine and implemented. And I'm not committed to one over the other. I'm very committed to meeting in the middle. And so the reason I say this is, again, similar to the pointing. I would encourage us to point to ourselves. And if this is the type of culture that we want, instead of influencing others to become it, simply choose to become it ourselves. Is I think what the opportunity is. And then if we, find purpose in our work, we create psychological safety amongst the people whom we can, up, side to side, and down. In time, those traditional metrics that those drivers care about will begin to look pretty good because there's high discretionary effort. It's a wonderful culture in your little pocket of the organization. Everyone wants to come work with you, and those traditional numbers will look better over time. Hopefully you have a little bit of leash and room, a couple of years to play with, maybe less. And when those numbers start to look better, then all of a sudden those drivers will go, "What are you doing over here?" And you'll go, "Oh, well, I'm putting my purpose in our people first. Can we do that?" "Yeah, sure." "Can you teach us?" "Absolutely happy to." "Do you want a promotion?" "I'll consider it." So I think, again, so long as you can protect and shield yourself enough and remain healthy enough, go rogue and just do it. And again, the fun thing is if you invest in the relationships closest to you and try to do it, if that team disbands, you can go Jerry Maguire it and do it elsewhere. And for those who don't know the reference, a great little American film with Tom Cruise. So yeah, so a similar question to Tate, but again, I think it's do whatever you can to control, because when it comes to senior leaders, you can lead a horse to water. You can't force them to drink. You can shove their head in the trough, but that doesn't usually end so well. And so no number of anonymous books or TED Talks sent to a senior leader's office is going to make a change. That any transformation comes from within. And so all you can do is commit to the change yourself and see who notices and who you can inspire along the way to come join the way that you're attempting to lead. Not that there's any one perfect way to lead, but yeah, I think there's a better way to lead.
Yeah, well done, Shed. So be the change that you want to see in the world. Start with where you are with what you've got, and you will start infecting others around you with the same approach.
Yeah, and if you are in a situation where you're doing the best you can and you feel as though you genuinely cannot be the type of person that you wish to be within your means, I'd recommend a change.
Yeah.
I don't think any one of us are ever in a position to say you should quit your job. I don't think any one of us can say that with good conscience. But if you find that you're in a situation where it's literally you're in a toxic culture and it's making you a worse person, try to find a safe leader internally, or try to find friends or safe, better leaders elsewhere.
Do you think that's an element of the Great Resignation right now?
Yeah. I think the Great Resignation, Great Talent Swap, there's tons of different names out there for it. I think it's a couple of things. I think it's a reflection of poor organizational culture. It's a reflection. So I heard a senior leader at Work Human describe it as there's the Great Resignation and the Great Talent Swap. The Great Resignation is more to traditional blue-collared workers who say, I'm being treated poorly and I'm not being paid fairly. That's it, I'm out. I'm going to do something else. Then there's the talent shuffle, which is typically more knowledge economy, white collared workers who are saying, I'm willing to sacrifice pay to have greater flexibility and a better, healthier culture. Now, some people don't even have to sacrifice pay. Some people are being paid more to also have greater flexibility. Careful, that might be a bit of a bubble. But I think it's hugely a reflection on, it's not that I don't want to go back to the office. I don't want to go back to your office. I want flexibility and I want healthy cultures,
I want to,
which I think is good. There's a shift. There's a power dynamic that I think is healthy and good.
I want to unpack that a little bit more, Shed, because there's a lot of talk on LinkedIn, particularly even this week, about people wanting to see an end to alpha male leadership styles, and to even say, let's stop celebrating these alpha male leader styles. And they're like the driver that you talk about. So with this talent swap, if we go with that term, do you forecast that in the future what we're going to see is maybe drivers that realize that driving only results in short-term results, and it's this culture that will bring long-term results, and the companies that we'll be talking about in 5 years from now will be the ones that got it?
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting because I think part of the archetype of these founder CEO types are generally higher on narcissism because they have these big visions and no one's going to get in the way. I mean, look at Steve Jobs. Nurturing leader, no. Vision and courage, yeah. Driver, maybe. And so, when you look at Elizabeth Holmes, who, that's another interesting case study as well. I'm just learning more about that one. But I think that those types of leaders are being outed more quickly, and I think more than ever we're embracing leaders who are higher on empathy and compassion, which doesn't mean lack of accountability, but it means we're valuing relationship. And then I think, leaders need to surround themselves with teams and mirrors. Leaders who don't breed psychological safety and then surround themselves with yes people, good luck with that. That's a house of cards. And I think we're seeing that play out in multiple countries and in multiple organizations right now.
Yeah, and then we get no self-awareness whatsoever. You get these horrible bosses that think that they're amazing. And that's what next week's podcast is going to be about, by the way. But that's for a topic at the end. But yeah, you end up with these horrible bosses that think they're amazing. You got a great compliment there from Joanne. The tail can wag the dog. Bottom up equals revolution. She really enjoyed your answer. Purpose and people first. Thank you for these beautiful points, Shed. So well done. Thank you, sir. All right, let's go to Rika's question. What level of hierarchy or rank relates to whether people have that risk of speaking up?
Oh, that's such a great question. How is the risk to speak up related to rank? Oh, very interesting, Rika. So there's got to be research on this. So a couple of things. So one, I'm working with an equation for culture, which is culture equals, in brackets, values multiplied by behavior to the power of power. So culture equals values times behavior. So by all means, I think organizations ought to have values. These are the things that we hold near and dear. Now, here's the thing. Enron had values. They were respect, communication, integrity, and excellence. Excellence is my least favorite value because it's meaningless. Like, Mick, do me a favor, more excellence for the rest of the day, please. What does that mean?
I'll get right onto it.
Yeah. But if I say do more of your great work, okay. Like that's something. That's a definition. With integrity, do the right thing, even if it's hard and especially no one's looking. Honesty, tell the truth. Like that's more action oriented. So I'm a believer in organizations and cultures having values, best when they're articulated as values or as verbs or action phrases. And then the test of a culture, the test of our integrity and our authenticity is the degree to which we live what's on the walls and on our screensavers. Do we actually live it? And it's values multiplied by behavior. Because if we have values and we don't live them, anything multiplied by 0 is 0. Worse, if we have values and we live counter to them, remember, reward and tolerate, now we have a deleterious toxic culture, because anything multiplied by a negative is a negative. Now, the more power we hold in an organization, and the definition of power is having possession over desired resources. So I may not have a title, but I could have an ear into a senior leader. Ergo, I have influence and I have power. The more power we have in an organization, the more we impact it. So in some respects, Rika, my guess, I have to look at the research on this, but my guess is it might be easier to speak up when we have less to lose, and we're in a sea and in a crowd. And then what I would say is the most senior in the organization, their risk to speak up is lowest, and they set the tone. So the most senior leader, CEO, founder, chairperson, they ought to walk the talk. And even those at their level or one level below on the C-suite or below, they've got things to lose. So it's hard. It might be hard for them to speak up, even a level lower. And so I think my guess is amongst a sea of people, it might be easier for someone more junior. And I think what we need to see is leaders, the most senior leaders, walking the talk, seeing the value of this, and eliciting, encourage and reward people when they do take that risk of sharing ideas, sharing concerns, and disagreeing.
The two things there I'm picking up, Shed, so I want to amplify what you said. I love your equation, and particularly this negative element. I'm going to put it out there and say this incongruence is a huge problem. And I'm going to go out there and say that an organization that stands up and says that our values are people first, and then their behaviors are the exact opposite, is worse than if they never said that they were people first in the first place, right? So that incongruence, right?
Yep.
That was
totally.
That was the first thing. And then the second one, this what have I got to lose? And I want to add something to what you said, because I agree with what you said, and then I think there's another thing to add. So when someone's very junior in an organization, they usually have little to lose. And then as they grow up, they get more and more to lose. And then the risk of speaking up maybe starts to increase. And then eventually they might get to the point where they've got nothing to lose again and they can speak again. The one I want to say to add is the mindset. So it could be that someone gets to a point in their career that they've got one foot out the door anyway. They've got a backup plan. They've got a safety net that they know that they could get a job at company XYZ down the road tomorrow. And they've started to mentally check out anyway, and then they've got nothing to lose again, and they might speak up. So I'd say mindset would be the one thing I'd add there. Thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with that. And there's sort of a catharsis when you finally get to the point where you went, oh, I don't need this job. I have merit, value, confidence, worth outside of here, and it can give a little bit of courage to speak up. The other thing, I mean, and we saw this from a case study with the Boeing 737 MAX 8, where Ed Pearson, who is a senior manager at Boeing on the 737 MAX 8 project in Renton, Washington, he tried to speak up. He spoke up. He was denied. And it finally got to the point where he was a whistleblower after the first plane went down. So the extreme of speak up is whistleblowing, which is when you go outside of the organization and you say, there's a problem here. I've tried. It's not working. Help. That's the most extreme example.
And in that case, you're now talking about your personal values are getting in the road.
Yes.
Like, I can't live with this anymore. I can't go home and spend time with my family knowing in good conscience that knowing of what I saw today that I didn't say anything. That's another good one as well, Shed. Yeah, well done.
Yeah.
All right, we've got another a few questions coming through. If you've got more questions, we've got about 10 minutes or so left. So if you've got any more questions, do post them. I want to now get to Alejandro's question. So you spoke about optimal performance, Shed, from Rich's book. And his questions about the relationship between speak up culture and optimal performance.
Oh, very good. And hey, Ale, thank you for the question. Look forward to speaking later this week, my friend. So there's a difference. So I think they're fundamental and inextricably linked. So let's define some terms. So the difference between optimal performance and peak performance. So peak performance is, for example, you're an athlete and you design your entire week such that on match day, let's say it's Sunday, you can peak. That's peak performance. But we don't all work like that. And optimal performance is different. Optimal performance means that we can give the best that we can at any given moment, to not just be resilient, but to be anti-fragile and grow, and work optimally as a team. So the difference between we peak versus optimal performance. Resilience is getting back to stasis. Optimal performance, I think, is growing from adversity and growing from those opportunities as individuals and a team. For a team to perform and work together optimally, you must have psychological safety. It is an absolute imperative. That how are we able, the only way for us to work optimally, and another thing that Rich talks about is dynamic subordination, which is the right person based on proximity and context steps up and leads, which means that we need vulnerability, right? Vulnerability is exposing our strengths and weaknesses on our sleeves. So, Mick, you and I are forming a team here and working together toward creating a great live stream for those that are tuning in, right? I know your role, you know my role. We had a 15-minute huddle up. We've prepped before this, right? Like we're on the same page. I'm not the one who's trying to take control and command of the chat. I'm not the one who's trying to set up who's on your show next week. Like that's you, right? And so we know our roles, we know our strengths, and we know how to lean on each other to perform optimally in this. And so, Alejandro, psychological safety is a must in order for us, to share openly, to share what we see. If we don't have psychological safety, we will not perform optimally.
Oh, brilliant! All right, thank you, Shed. I can't add anything. That was absolutely brilliant. And Ali has actually said amoeba-like leadership and team dynamics. Spot on, dude. So well done. We also had a thank you there from Rika as well for the answer that you gave to her question before there as well, Shed. I want to ask one more for my own interest now, because this is also
Sure.
a term that's being used a lot, and it's certainly contrary to speak up culture. Gaslighting. What is gaslighting? A lot of people are talking about it, and why is it so detrimental?
So, gaslighting is a form of control and manipulation in which, let's say I'm your leader, you come to me with a concern, you're vulnerable enough to share your truth, your experience, and I essentially say to you, Mick, didn't happen, and your feeling is invalid. I'm very sorry, you cannot argue with people's feelings. Like if someone says to me, I feel this way and that way, I can't say, no, you don't. I can show care and I can say, tell me what's happened to make you feel that way. Not my intention, but it was still an impact. And I need to own that impact, right? Leaders own their impact on others, whether it's intended or not.
Yeah.
The worst apology is, I'm sorry you feel that way. That's not an apology. That's a cop out. And so gaslighting is when you deny someone's human or emotional experience. And it is awful. It feels like a rug is pulled out beneath you. And so if you yourself are exposed to gaslighting from a leader, I encourage you to seek help. Or if you witness it happening, I would encourage you, as opposed to calling it out, uh, um, uh, call people in and call people on to rise up and be better. And if it doesn't improve, you can call out. But yeah, gaslighting, no bueno.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, thank you. I want to end on a positive kind of thing that people can go away and do. So I want to use a little case study, and let's see it like this. So let's say that you're having a team meeting, and so you are the leader, and someone does speak up, right? So you've created that safety, and someone has done so. They've brought up an opinion, and it's an opinion that you don't agree with, but you don't want to shut them down because finally someone spoke up. Any advice on how to
What do
handle
you
that
do?
one? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, some of this is in cultural norms. I hope that the person who does speak up chooses to do so with kindness and respect.
Yeah.
If not, you can still reward the fact that truth was unearthed, but you can say you can encourage them and others to change the way in which we deliver it. And that could be in a one-on-one. So I think if someone does share truth, I think you need to pause and reward that truth and to say, well, that took courage, thanks. A friend of mine, Bob Chapman, who's the CEO and chairperson of Barry Waymiller, he has this thing that when he walks into a room and he senses that there's a pile of poop on the table, like it's a contentious meeting, he goes, "Where's the pony?" Like, that's just the type of guy he is, which is like, "Where's the pony? Great. Like, what's going on? Let's get the crap on the table and let's talk about it." And so I think if someone, dare does it, even if the delivery isn't perfect, you still have to reward it and say, okay, there was some emotion there. That's all good. Thanks for doing it. Let's pause and let that sit, but we need to talk about that. And whether we do it right now, do we want to have this conversation now, or do we want to table it but actually have it? Yeah. And if the delivery wasn't good, it's kind of like, if I ask my wife, "Hey, honey, can you take out the garbage?" and she goes, "You always ask me to do that." I'm like, okay, the feelings outweigh the facts. Something's up, right? Yeah. It's like, all right, let's take a breath and let's have a conversation. What's going on, And so even if the delivery isn't good, I think that's a time to pull someone aside and say, okay, I really appreciate that you shared what's actually going on that is so important. I'm sorry that it got to this point and this level, but what's up? How are you? And I want to encourage that, and I'm asking that we do it in a more respectful way. Is that fair? What's going on? So we can't shut it down, because if we do, even if the behavior isn't perfect, that's still
everyone's
punishing
watching.
It.
It's everyone's watching,
everyone
and
is
they're going to have a learned behavior from that. There were
and a whisper is a shout. A whisper is a shout as a leader.
Yeah, very good. There were two things there that really popped into my mind. The bit about emotion, I'll just share a thought. This is something I'm studying at the moment, Shed, and it might end up being in my second book. We'll see. This thought that emotion is telling you something. And emotion is telling you that you've either got a need that has been met, a positive emotion, and you're getting rewarded for that need being met, or a need hasn't been met. And the emotion is telling you, hey, I've got a need here that's not being met. And that need could be anything from survival to love and belonging to power to fun to freedom of choice and freedom from oppression. It's telling you something. And if someone is having an emotional outburst to you, what need has not been met for them? And it could be something unrelated to the topic that you're talking about. It's just something has upset them right now. That was the first one. And then the second one, you actually encapsulated that reward beautifully in everything you said in the response of when I said, oh, how would you handle that? You rewarded the behavior that you wanted to reward, but you didn't tolerate the behavior that was not quite right, the bit that was off. And you kind of wrapped up that three trifecta, that reward and celebrate the behaviors that you want to see in the company. Don't tolerate the ones that you don't want to see. So that's the tolerate and don't tolerate. So yeah, really great. I love the advice that you gave there, Shed.
Great.
Okay, so I'd like to give you the floor to finish us off here. So and I've got a few announcements about the Leadership Project at the end of this, but Shed, I want to give you the opportunity now to talk to the audience. I know you've got a new website coming up. You've got your book in progress. Please share with the audience how they get in contact with you. If they want to know more about Speak Up Culture, how do they get hold of you, sir?
Awesome. Thank you, Mick, and thanks for the opportunity to join you and everyone here. So fun to do this. So yeah, I have a new website that should be launching this week or next called shedinspires.com. So more info there, and you can definitely get in touch with me and team that way. The book should be coming out fall of 23, so a bit of a runway here still. And I believe for the time being, I'm the only Stephen Shedletzky in the entire world. So all you handfuls of Shedletskys out there, kindly don't name your children Stephen. We'll see. But yeah, if you search for me, you can find me, and I'm most active on LinkedIn, so it's easy to get a hold of me there.
Brilliant, Chad. And I, for one, I follow you closely on LinkedIn. Like, so in terms of your kind of, it feels like almost daily there's something that you post that is thought provoking for me. And that's why I follow you so closely. And I don't always agree with everything you said, but that's what diversity of thought's about, right? So that,
Oh,
and
good.
yeah. So, but it's really, every time I see a post from you, I'm always interested to see what you say and also to see what reaction you get, because it does evoke responses from people as well. So awesome, Shed. Thank you so much for joining us. Please bear with me for a moment. Please, everyone, thank Shed for joining in. So the please, I can't say enough about Shed, the time that he gives us on the show, coming on our 50th episode of the podcast, coming on the live stream here and answering your live questions. So please pass on your thanks in the comments to Shed for his time today. And Shed, if you just give me a little bit of license, I'm going to go through a few things for our business in the background as we close out. So everyone,
Yeah,
I'd
go for it.
like to bring to your attention that we are now taking our applications for our next cohort of our Gateway to High Performance Leadership program. So this is our flagship program. It's an 8-week course that goes through 8 different modules using collaborative and social learning and micro-learning and gamification to ensure that it's a truly transformative program for you. We use learning labs, we use practical labs, and we get you to put the things that you learn directly into practice whilst it's still fresh in your mind. So I'd like to bring that to your attention. If you'd like to apply to be part of that program, please do contact Joanne. And Joanne, can you please put your email address in the contact, in the comments in both LinkedIn and Facebook, if you can, please. I'd also like to tell you that, very exciting, my book went to the copy editor this week, and we are closer now than ever. So we'll get the book back from the copy editor at the end of this week, then goes for formatting, and then it'll be out. So I'm talking about a matter of weeks now before You're a Leader Now What is out there. You can also go to mixbeers.com and be able to download our self-reflection journal, which is a tool that I use every day. I've used it for the last 14 years, practicing self-reflection every day to be able to improve my skills as a leader. So I encourage you to look into that as well. It's something you can download for free and start putting that into practice for you. And finally, I'd like to say that we've rebranded our Facebook community. It's now called Learn Together, Lead Together. And we wanted it to be clear that that community is yours. It's not ours. That community is yours, and it's there for you to have conversations with others and to share your thoughts about leadership, to ask questions and to talk amongst each other. Yes, we moderate it, but it's not our community, it's your community. So please, I do encourage you to come back to that. So I'll close out there on the kind of leadership project advertisements. I'm going to bring Shed back onto screen because we're getting a few comments here from good friend of both you and I, Lee Prosenjak, saying well done, bravo. Lee is coming onto the live stream on the, I think, 2nd of May, we said, Lee. I can't remember. It's on my calendar. But early May, Lee is coming onto the show, and he's going to talk about leading a purposeful life and leading a life by design. That's going to be absolutely amazing. We've got Irene saying thank you for being such a gracious and generous guest. Lenka in New Zealand, great session. Thank you, Mick and Shed. And Faris, thank you, Shed. Learned a lot from you both. So absolutely wonderful having you on the show. I'll finish out to say that we have Marcel Darnay coming on next week. He was our guest on episode 51 of the show, and he talks about how not to be a horrible boss, which is a really cool topic. And to take Shed's point that he made in this episode, there's so many horrible bosses out there that have got no self-awareness. They think no one turns up to work every day going, I'm going to be a horrible boss. They just don't have self-awareness of the actions and how those actions are having an impact on others. So thank you again. Please say goodbye, Shed, and we'll close out and let everyone get back to their day.
All right. Thanks all. A pleasure, Mick, and good to do this with you.
All right, brilliant. Thanks, Shed.